Please be seated. We have come together today to remember the life of Saul Lurie. And even though he has left us in body, he remains with us in spirit and in memory. Our funeral service begins now with the words of the psalmist. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid ki mimeni balemot. Lachen samach libi v'yagel kevodi, af besari yishkon levetach. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side, I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult and my soul rejoice, my being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful one see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. In Jewish tradition, Psalm 23 is the psalm of mourning. I will recite the psalm now in Hebrew, followed by the English. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, bino tedeshe yarbitzeni, al me menuchot yinahaleni. Nafshi shovev, yancheni v'magleit tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki elech beged sal mavet, lo irara ki ata imati. Shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shochan neged sorarai. Dishanta vashemen roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov vachesed yirdafuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever, as we say together, Amen. This next well-known reading is from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. With Job we say, Adonai Natan, God you have given. You gave us Saul, who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai Lakach, God you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust, before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love, as we say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. Blessed be the name of God, now and forever. Amen. This time I'd like to invite up members of the Jewish war veterans to offer a ceremony in memory of Saul.
Thank you. My name is Jack Kirschenbaum, and I am the past commander of the American Legion Post 522 in Monroe Township, as well as the past commander of the Jewish War Veterans, Post 609. In 2019, December 2019, I interviewed Saul for our newsletter, and he told me the following. I was born in 1930 in Kaunas, the temporary capital of Lithuania. In 1941, the German army occupied Lithuania and placed me, my family, and other Jews in a ghetto. I remained there from 1941 to 1943. Starting in 1943, I was moved from one camp to another. I spent time in Dachau, Kaufering, Landsberg, Auschwitz-Birkenau, and Buchenwald. I was 15 years old on April 11, 1945, when American forces liberated the camp that I was in. I was then placed for 2 years in an orphanage in France. With the help of the International Red Cross, my cousins, the United States, located me and sponsored my visa application to the United States. In April 1947, I arrived in the United States, and in 1952, at the age of 22, I enlisted in the Army. It was the middle of the Korean War, and I wanted to fight for this country because this country had given me my freedom. I received my basic and advanced infantry training at Fort Dix, New Jersey. However, because I spoke German, I was shipped to an army base in Weimar, Germany, and assigned to the 26th Infantry Regiment, 1st Division. We were on constant alert in preparation for a possible attack by the Soviet Union's armed forces. After serving for 2 years, I was discharged from the Army with the rank of corporal. I returned to the United States and obtained employment in a paint store. Then I struck out on my own and worked in home repair. Over the years, I married and lost 2 wives to illnesses. In 1996, I moved to Greenbrier. A year after I moved in, I met a neighbor who had just moved in and lived about 5 houses away from me. While introducing ourselves, the man asked about my accent. As I told him about my history, he broke down in tears. That lasted several minutes. When he recovered, he informed me that he served in the Army and was in the first tank that liberated Buchenwald, the concentration camp that I was in. I believe in destiny, and I see my mission in life is to educate people to love and respect one another. So with pride and gratitude, we at the American Legion Post 522 and Jewish War Veterans Post 609 salute and acknowledge Sal's contribution and the contribution of all the men and women in the service for safeguarding our home, our community, our country, and our way of life. Please stand.
Thank you very much. We have come together today to remember the life of Saul Lurie. Saul was born on April 11th, 1930 in Kovno, Lithuania, and he lived to the age of 95. He was the son of Shimon and Basha, and the youngest of four with his brothers Mende, Chaim, and Shlomo, all of blessed memory. Saul was married to Evelyn of blessed memory. Saul was married to Raya of blessed memory. And today Saul is remembered by his family. His children, B, who is married to David, Esther, and Charles, who is married to Karen. His granddaughter, Emily, who is married to Michael. Today we also remember Saul's grandson, Seth, of blessed memory, who was taken from us tragically at too young of an age. Saul was also close to Raya's family. Her children, Carol, who is married to Steve, and Ellen, who is married to Steve, a different Steve. And Raya's grandchildren, Nicole, Douglas, Selena, and Samantha. As we just heard, Saul was 11 years old when the Nazis invaded Lithuania. His mother, Basha, of blessed memory, was killed during the war. Thank God, Saul and his father and brothers survived. Saul survived 6 concentration camps. In a few moments, Bea will be speaking about her father and his incredible story of survival and resilience. As we heard, Saul came to Brooklyn with his family in 1947. He joined the Army and was so proud to serve his country and to be an American. Saul met his beloved Evelyn of blessed memory in 1957. They moved to Canarsie, where they raised their children. In 1993, Saul was married to Raya of blessed memory. Over 20 years ago, Saul began to tell his story. I first met Saul 10 years ago. Here at the temple, we have a special program for our 7th graders run by the Daniel Pearl Education Center, where we take them to the Holocaust Museum in Washington. Then the next day, we invite a Holocaust survivor to speak with our students from the temple. About 10 years ago, Saul was here at our synagogue. He spoke to our students and told his story, and you could not hear a pin drop. I was so moved by his incredible strength, his positive attitude, and how he continued to embrace life. It's been my great pleasure to share in joyous times with Saul and his family. I was able to officiate at the weddings of Bess and Mandy, to sit at the table with Saul and Bea and David and Esther and share in that joyous times and those good celebrations. Since Saul began to share his story 20 years ago, he has received over 10,000 letters from children across the country. These letters are a testament to the incredible influence Saul had and to the lessons he taught, to love and not to hate. After the pandemic, Saul's health began to decline. He developed dementia and his memory began to give way. But Saul's spirit remained strong. When I came to visit Saul in these last months, we would sing together, and one of his favorite songs was Hava Nagila. I would sing, and he would smile and open his mouth and sing a little with me too. Saul embraced life until the end, and he was always living with love. Saul has been such an inspiration to thousands of children and an inspiration to his family. Now Saul has left this earth, and he is at peace. Saul Lurie will always hold a special place in the hearts of his family. We ask that God watch over his soul and provide him with eternal peace. Zichrono livracha, may his memory be for a blessing, as we say together, Amen. This time I'd like to invite Bea up to share some words.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. How do you define a great man? Is it his career accomplishments, his material possessions, his values? My father, Saul Lurie, was a great man, an exceptional man, my hero. He was a man shaped by his devoted parents, a huge, very close family of aunts, uncles, and cousins. As a child, he learned the values of honesty, hard work, commitment, sharing, and empathy. My father also had a deep faith and loved attending shul every Shabbos with his grandfather Label, of blessed memory. While his world was shattered by the Holocaust, he never gave up on his values. His character was further formed by resilience, courage, a relentless belief in Bashert, destiny, and a determination to outlive Hitler that knew no bounds. For 4 cruel years, my father survived 6 concentration camps and the Kovna ghetto in 3 countries and was liberated, of course, on his 15th birthday from Buchenwald. And growing up, my mother doubted this because she said, look, she goes, it was Europe. It probably was not a 4/11. It was probably November 4th. And when doing research for the book, I found the document, and of course my father was right, because no matter how sometimes absurd things he told us, you do the research, and he was right, because life was sometimes very hard to believe that that could be true. So while at a Jewish orphanage, the Ozay in France, in Normandy, my father decided to go to America to live with an aunt and uncle that he had never met, rather than join his father and 3 brothers who also survived, which is considered incredibly rare by the Holocaust Museum. And they survived and they ended up behind the Iron Curtain in Lithuania. And my father decided at the age of 16 that he didn't want to live a life of repression and hatred. He wanted to be free. And so he made the bold decision that he was going to go to America to live with an aunt and uncle who he had never met in a country he had never been. It's hard for me to believe that I could do that at the age of 16. So in recent days, as my dad was dying, I started calling my beloved father the Miracle Man, because his life was filled with so many miracles. And I'm just going to share with you just a few quick ones, and not tell you all the whole stories, but just pieces of them. So my dad was running from the Nazis who had just murdered my 7-month-old cousin, and he was running through the stable, and he hid in a spot, and the Nazis were going around with pitchforks, actually their bayonets, trying to find him, and his brother Mendes screamed at him in Yiddish, "Get out now." So my father started running, and the Nazis are shooting at him, luckily missing him. And I feel like this is like an action movie because it's like amazing. I mean, he ran to the back of the stable, he jumped over the fence, ran into the outhouse, and when he heard, and he submerged himself, not fully yet, into the waist, and when he heard the Nazis at the outhouse door, he fully submerged himself. And he just had this relentless resilience, and just to win, to beat Hitler, and that was his whole motivation during those 4 horrible years. He also was a miracle man because he survived Dr. Mengele. Like, who survives Dr. Mengele? He was chosen by Dr. Mengele to be one of his experiments, and he was kept in a bunk overnight. And the day before, they were picking, some kids to go and work in the fields, the slave labor. And so my father said that he heard his grandfather, who died the day before the war, before the Nazis invaded, he heard his grandfather say that you need to be taller so they'll pick you, so you look older. So he went to his bunk and he put straw in his shoes, and of clogs, and the Nazis picked him to work in the fields. When he was working in the fields in Buna, he would steal potatoes because he wanted to make sure that not only he had enough sustenance, but he wanted to make sure that his fellow inmates, prisoners, were also getting sustenance. So he would steal these potatoes, and one day the commandant had heard about this and came and put a gun to his head and said, "I'm going to kill you." And my father was like, "My life's over." And he had many moments like that. And the commandant was, my father said, screaming at him like a crazy person, and cocked the gun and then said, "Just kidding," and said, "You do it again, though I will kill you." And my father continued to steal the potatoes. So my father had a lot of moxie, a lot of bravery, and here's some examples. So he wasn't drafted into the Army. He didn't have to go into the Army, but he was so upset that other kids in his East New York neighborhood were being drafted and he wasn't, that he marched himself into the recruitment office and said, "Why have I not been called? I want to serve my country." And they said, "You're not a citizen. You can't serve." And he says, "I don't care." He goes, "This country saved my life and I want to serve my country." And he was just angry and insistent. And a few days later, he got his letter and was so happy. When he went to Germany, we used to always say, "My God, that must have been horrible." And he said, no, he goes, that's a quote, "You wanted to annihilate this little Jew. Here I am as a conqueror." And he just was like that. He was another two quick stories about his moxie and bravery, or stupidity, depending on how you look at it. He was working for this painter, Shamus and Sons, in Brownsville, and they got robbed a lot. So my father would have one pocket for the criminals and one pocket for himself. And he would put $20 in one pocket, which is a lot of money back then for the criminals, and the other one he'd have the cash, that he made, his tips and everything else. And he was held up at gunpoint twice, and gave them, the cash that was for them. And I remember him telling my mother when one of these incidents happened, and she was so furious that he would risk his life for the money. And he said, "Look, I've worked really hard for this money, and I'm not giving it to some criminals." So, and the other story, it was my father was working in a tie factory, and he heard that the Americans were making a lot more money an hour than he was. And so he went to the owner, and he hadn't been in the country that long. He went to the owner and he said to the owner, he said, "I hear that these Americans are making more. I want to make the same amount of money that they're making." And he says, "I'm good, I work hard, I want to be paid." They were being paid by the piece, and he was being paid by the hour. And he just insisted, and the owner said, "I'm not going to pay you more." And my father said, "Then I quit." And he got himself another job that paid a lot more money. It was by the day they were getting paid, actually. So his basic attitude was, I survived Hitler, so why am I going to let anybody not treat me the way that I want to be treated, and just take these risks. And one final story was when Esther and I were little, I guess I was 10 and you were 7, there was this kid who came running into Canarsie, into the neighborhood, when my father was cleaning his truck, and Esther was outside, and he said, Mister, please save me. These kids are trying to kill me." So my father took this kid and put him in the outer well of our basement, and sure enough, you know, a few minutes later, this gang of kids came screaming and saying, "Where is he? You know, we're gonna kill him." And it was a case of racism. The kid was black. He was a young teenager who just happened to get up at the wrong bus stop and ended up in the neighborhood that these Italian kids felt he didn't belong in. And they're threatening my father that they're going to kill him, that they're going to burn the house down. And my father just stood his ground. I'm in the house terrified. You know, my mother tells me to just go down under the window so they can't see me. And my father just stood his ground and said, I survived a bigger bully than you, and you're not going to win. And they left. So, and then my father, brought him in the house. My mother fed him. My father drove him away, gave him what was a lot of money, back then, and saved his life. And then when he started telling his story, and that was because of, Samantha. I mean, I tried to get him to talk about it because he said he wanted to for 11 years. He's very stubborn. But Samantha was good. She, in 4 months, she got him to tell his story. And that opened up for him a whole new lease on life. He goes, this is the reason God saved me from the Holocaust, so that I can share my story, so that people know what happened. I want to, before I read something from his biography, I want to first thank my incredible husband, David, my sister, Esther, who I've been calling an angel. I mean, she gave up so many years of her life to be able to take care of our dad. And it was hard. It was really hard dealing with somebody who's so sick. I came in every month, but she was there all the time. And I just am so grateful to her and love her so much. And to my amazing daughter, Emily, and her equally amazing husband, Michael, to Carol and Steve, who have been just, they're our family. But even at a deeper level than just, being related by marriage. They really, they would come every week to visit my dad, and they were available whenever Esther wanted to talk, and just amazing people. I want to thank Griselda. Where's Griselda? Oh, there she is. Griselda, I don't think there are enough words in the English language to describe Griselda. She is just the most extraordinary human being I have ever met. In every aspect. Giving, loving, kind, sincere. She's funny. She's an extraordinary mother. And her mother's extraordinary, so I understand how she got to be so extraordinary. Her husband's amazing. There's nothing that Griselda wouldn't do, not just for us, but for other people, because she's like my dad. She really is, and it was such a blessing that she came in our life, and somebody from Greenbrier Whittingham recommended her, and I wish I remembered their name, but boy, it gives the gift of a lifetime. We also had amazing other caregivers. Wow, each of them so special. We had, oh, here's Brielle, oh my gosh. And so we had, oh, my mind's gonna go blank, Amy, Lurie, isn't that her mother? Lurie, okay, and Janet, and Katie, and Sharon, and Maria. It was a team of, there was always 6 people working for us, and then we had 2, subs who would help out. And my father gave us so much joy even when he was sick, because he would smile occasionally, and we would all light up, and He would sing sometimes Hava Nagila and Dayenu. Um, and Brielle, who just came in, she's a music therapist. And so she would come in. She's not Jewish, and she learned how to sing songs to him in Yiddish and in Hebrew. Phenomenal. And so we were very grateful. And one day, I asked Mandy to come, and Mandy brought her violin and played for him a few times. And I want to thank Freda and Sina and Bess for being incredible family, and Harry and Leah and Alex for being there for us, and all of you, and my cousin Mark, who came, and Billy. Wow, hi Billy. Okay, so let me just close with my dad's own words. My dad says that he was not leaving this world until I accomplished my mission. And what's my mission? That people love and respect one another, treat people the way they want to be treated, and there is peace in the world. The world is a beautiful place. It's up to us to make it that way. So that's a directive from my father. So we have a mission to fix this world quickly, otherwise he's going to be really angry with us. Saul's experience taught him many life lessons. He said, I am very proud. I am not afraid of anybody. I stand up to anybody, even politicians who I don't like. That's what I am trying to teach people. Don't be afraid. If you think that something is wrong, fight for it. If you stand up to a bully, they run away, said Saul. And quote, what I went through hurts, but I hope future generations don't go through what we went through because you know what the past was, shared Saul. We know what the present is, but we don't know what the future is. And it's up to us to make sure that the future doesn't repeat what the past was. That's the most important thing. Thank you. Do you want to speak?
Sure. Okay. Sure. Now I'd like to invite up Carol to share some words.
I know how Esther feels. I could not even speak after my mother passed. But Saul was a very special person, very special to me, to everyone that was here, very special to many, many people. I don't know how he could have survived what he survived and turned out to be such a wonderful, loving, caring, optimistic individual, very unique. He basically came into our lives after his first wife, Evelyn of blessed memory, passed, and my mother attended a support group for widows and widowers after my father, Samuel of blessed memory, passed. As Saul always said, it was their destiny. As we got to know Saul's children, I realized that my sister Ellen and I had played with them several times, yes, because my parents' friends, Saul and Izzy, I think both of them may have also passed of blessed memory, lived next door, and we came over and we went outside and we played with you guys and your brother Charles. So again, there was that destiny again. And then I realized, looking through my wedding album, that Saul and his first wife, Evelyn, attended my wedding. So, and our rabbi grew up around the corner from B and David and, the kids. So it just was so meant to be. Anyway, Saul and my mother made a good life. I would even say a great life together. She said good life was her exact words, because when she was passing, she was talking all about her life. And they still remember their spouses, but honored them by continuing to have a happy life, a happy marriage with each other. They grew old together until we lost my mother. They enjoyed socializing with their friends and traveling. I'm so happy that some of my mom's friends are here. I can't even tell you. They enjoyed traveling, spending winters in Florida, and I see how good that is, and celebrating events and holidays with family. In his retirement, Saul became a powerful speaker about the Holocaust all over the country. But Saul was not just a second husband for my mother. He was a grandfather to my children that they called Papi Saul, and a father to me and my husband, Steve. He proudly attended my children's marathon long dance recitals and school activities, which was not always easy. He came with us to my daughter's they had like parents' weekend in college in the fall up to Boston, and we took him sightseeing a little bit. We walked by a Holocaust memorial, and he was very touched and affected by it. And he started talking to people there and telling them his story, and he arranged to speak in New England through that visit. So he spoke all over the country. Just amazing, amazing person. And most of our friends and coworkers even heard him speak. They asked me at work to have him come and do something for the staff, so he spoke. And they were so impressed with him that they just continued to this day. They were asking about him. You know, always wanted to know, how is Saul? How is Saul? What a great man. It was not just the fact that he survived, but how he inspired all of us when he specifically said to love one another, not to hate. My children have very fond memories going over to the house and opening the pantry closet filled with candy that they would not have at home, because Saul wanted, not only did he want the food around, but I think he wanted to feed other people, to make other people happy. But he didn't just feed them food, he fed them the knowledge of what happened to him, and to love and to build character. You know, he was a very, very primary influence in their lives. And they wish they could be here, but they weren't able to come. Steve and I will always be grateful for how much Saul loved my mother and took care of her and treated us like his children and my children as his grandchildren. And I want to thank his family for sharing him with us. I know in the beginning it was hard. It's tough. It was a tough transition, but I was just amazed to see the care that Esther provided and Bea provided, and his family when they came, Emily and David and Michael, and just like Bea said, the cousins, unbelievable how close Saul drew people into him, because he was an incredible man. And very sorry for this wonderful man that we lost, but I mean, we had him for a while, and we all benefited from that.
Is there anyone else who would like to share any words at this time? Yes. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to apologize for not being dressed appropriately. I did not know that I would be attending this funeral. I got the text message from Esther, and I turned my car around and drove directly here. It's very interesting that he died last night, because I had a dream that I needed to find this moonstone that I pray over frequently. And I couldn't find it in the dream. And this morning when I woke up, I said, okay, I have to bring this thing with me. So I have it with me, and as soon as Esther texted me that he passed, I knew that it was him telling me that I needed to pray today, that I needed to bring this. And I've been coming to this temple over the past few months, partially because of Bea and Esther and the book that they wrote about soul. I read it and I was so inspired that I started coming here, right? And the other part is my boyfriend and his family, and him being Jewish and me wanting to learn. So I thank you so much for the music, for the songs. Havenu Shalom Aleichem. I thank you for sharing your Jewish culture with me and for teaching me through your spirit and through your love. I thank you for the time that I got to spend with him, and you have forever changed me. I will pray in Hebrew for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to share any words at this time? Okay.
Hi, I'm David Rothman. I'm not a family relative, but I was the chairman of the Henry Rickless Holocaust Memorial Committee 2000-2004. And during those years, I had the fortune of meeting Saul Lurie, and told me many of the stories that we heard before. But the thing that impressed me, one of our projects was to get the information out about the Holocaust. And to your point, one of his goals was to educate the world so it doesn't happen again. We contacted the Monroe Township High School. They agreed to it. They had a freshman auditorium scheduled April, May, and they brought all the kids there. So you're talking near the end of the school year, the kids would all walk in and they're talking and so forth, and then we started the meeting. And we had 3 speakers, different Holocaust survivors who came to talk. Invariably, Saul was one of those speakers. When those speakers started, to your point, you could hear a pin drop, especially since Monroe Township High School, probably the dominant religion, if there is one, is Hindu. You have so many Asian Indians. They had no exposure to this whatsoever. And Saul would speak, and to who you had said before, he started off by saying, is this a message to me?
No, I apologize. I don't know why that did that. Sorry, everybody.
No problem.
I thought that was
Tell
quiet.
them I'm busy.
Hey,
Okay, thank you.
Proceed.
Okay, please. So, as I said, you could hear a pin drop. He would start off exactly as what was said. I don't hate anyone. You should love your neighbors, your friends, love everyone, and treat them equally, regardless of the race, religion, and so forth. He would always start that way. And then he would share his story. And as I said, the auditorium, which was set for the 50-minute hour, went on for an hour and 20, and the principal and so forth didn't have the guts to stop it because the kids were so involved. After it was over, oh, by the way, we challenged the students and said, okay, you don't have to do it, it's not mandatory, but here's an essay, and if you want to, we'll give an award for the top 3. And the questions were something like, what would you have done if you were alive at the time of the Holocaust? And another one was, have you shared what you learned here today with anyone in your family, and what happened? We would get 400 to 500 essays, and this is all volunteer, would come back. We'd have to pick the top 3 and gave them $50 each. We didn't want to go crazy. Anyhow, I would tell you that after the program was over, students would come running up to have their picture taken with the speakers, including Saul. So I would look up, and it was, 50 to more students up there, half of which are Hindu, and I'm looking at this, and they're all smiling, and there he is in the middle with a big grin on his face, taking pictures. And they obviously shared this. And the biggest essay that came back was, when you heard this, and you shared it with your family, what did they say? And that was the biggest, because so many of them were taking it back to people who had never heard of the Holocaust before. He loved doing it. He was regular there. I am telling you, tens of thousands of people around this New York, New Jersey area have pictures of Saul in the middle sitting there. So he was a special guy who put his heart and soul in treating people equally and letting people know the story of everything else. So I thank you for giving them us. Thank you.
I've been a friend of Saul's for about 5 years. I met him while doing a weekly Wheels on Meals delivery in the Greenbrier area, Greenbrier community, under the auspices of the Jewish Family Service. And for the first year or so on my deliveries on Mondays, I didn't know anything about Saul. He would greet me at the door, and I'd give him the food, and just how's it going, and nothing more than that. And then about 4 years ago, it was in the spring, and he came out of his house onto the driveway, dressed in spring clothing, and it was nice, sunny out. And he had a couple of chairs set up, and when I gave him the food, he made, wow, a birthday present, because it was April 11th, and he was 92 at the time, and he said it's his double birthday. And I didn't know how old he was then. I figured he was probably at least in his 80s. And I thought by double birthday, maybe he meant he was 88, something like that. But he told me that was the day he was liberated from Buchenwald on April 11th, 1945. He was 15 years old, as was described by B and the rabbi. And so we sat down, and he pulled up his shirt to show me his Auschwitz numbers, his tattoo from Auschwitz, and we just started talking, and I was overwhelmed. Of course, I knew there were a large number of Holocaust survivors in the community, and I'd seen Holocaust survivors speak at different events, and in fact, my wife and I had even been to Auschwitz once on a trip. And so I was very well informed about the Holocaust for all kinds of reasons, reading books, going to museums, going to memorials, everywhere around the world for that matter. But to sit with a survivor like that, in that type of just ordinary day, ordinary spring day, and he invited me into the house and showed me around the pictures, told me some stories, and we sat for a while. And then at that point, really established a very wonderful friendship. When I would come on Mondays, I wouldn't just deliver the food. I would sit, and he would talk, and I was always, as I am now, just stunned by how he had such an optimistic attitude about life with all he'd experienced. Just no signs of anger or bitterness or hate. And of course, we all know what he went through. We could only I mean, we know from reading, we know from what he talked about. It's hard to imagine, but he just had that great character that he had hope. It's not easy, but he had hope. And so we would talk on Mondays, and on his birthday, I would go out to lunch with him, and he would flirt with the waitress, and sort of the star of the restaurant. And this went on all through the past years, and getting to know Bea and Esther and the family, and Giselda, quite. I think he's just like a beacon. He's just like a beacon of someone who emerged as a survivor. Of course, that word has many connotations. And I was fortunate to be with Saul and Bea and Esther and Giselda on Monday to come, in effect, say goodbye and see him for a last time. And that was very, very meaningful. So I thank the family for embracing me and including me in different things, and of course for the great memories I'll have of Saul Lurie. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily, I'm Saul's granddaughter. I wasn't sure if I was going to speak today, but something I just heard, I guess, compelled me to, so bear with me. There are two words to describe my grandfather: ordinary and extraordinary. Growing up, he was Grandpa. And until, I guess, Michael and I got a call, not this last Saturday, but the Saturday before, saying, Grandpa's dying, you need to come now. And so we did, and we raced over, and he hung on for another week and a couple of days against the odds, against what everyone possibly could imagine. And I said to my mom, it's the first time in my life I truly understand how he could survive the Holocaust, because it's something so incomprehensible. I mean, if you think about, my husband and I were talking about this the other day, if you think about what we consider hard, and then you think about what he went through, you can't compute. But he had such a strong will to live that even in his final days, he was determined, even in his final days, you could get a smile, you could sit there and hold his hand, and you could feel the strength of his spirit. So yes, I will remember my grandfather as the man who hoarded candy and would sneak it to me, and I think I gained 5 pounds every time I went to visit him. I remember my grandpa's joy when I would come to visit, when my brother and I would come to visit, and he would take us to the clubhouse and to the pool and tell everyone he saw, this is my granddaughter. I also remember going to the supermarket with him. And by the way, an experience in its own right. He would complain about the prices of everything, and I would try to explain inflation and how that worked, and it really was just never going to work. But the most memorable part was at checkout, and this is true whether it was in Monroe Township or in Chattanooga. Any chance he had, he would lift up his sleeve, and he would say, do you see this? I survived the Holocaust. And he would take every moment that he could to share his story and to share his message So he lived 95 ordinary and extraordinary years on this earth, and he took every moment that he could when he was ready to share his values and his message. And I know that through the book, through my mom, through Esther, and through myself, his legacy will live on for a very long time. So thank you all for being here, for being a part of our lives, for being a part of his life and his story.
Let us take a moment of silent prayer now as we remember Saul. Please rise. El male rachamim, shochein bamromim, hamitzei menocha nechona tacha kanfei ashchina, im kadoshim utehorim, kazor harakia ma'asirim, et nishmat Shaya ben Shimon uvasha shehalcha le'olama. Bal harachamim yastereu b'seter kanafav le'olamim, vayitzror b'torah chaim et nishmato. Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar. Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Saul Lurie, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, as we say together. Amen. This concludes our service in the sanctuary. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Zoom this morning. Thank you all. Be well.